What's happening, everyone? You're watching Joburg TV, and tonight we decided to come out at Pop Art for the Serurubele Slam Edition Kiss and Tell. Now, this is a storyteller series, and it aims to create a place for sharing new South African stories. Ithi ngamoshi isikhathi, guys, masingene ngaphakathi simamele inganekwane. Sitting next to me is Lebu, who is the Storyteller series creator. I'm correct, right? Yeah, so I just want to find out what made you start the Storyteller series.
I started storytelling a couple of years ago. I keep forgetting when, like maybe 6 years ago. And I was overseas. I was teaching English in South Korea, and I love writing. And I would write these first-person stories based on my life, but pretend that they were not from my life, and then read them at open mic events. And someone was like, "These stories are obviously about you. Have you heard of something called The Moth?" That's where people tell personal stories from their life, and I think you might enjoy it. I listened to The Moth. I loved it.
So tell me about the experience of being here, because it sounds a lot like you are in therapy, you know, and sometimes, you know, you just want to release and calm down and learn a thing or two from the other person.
Yeah.
So just tell us about the experience of being at such storyteller series.
The evenings here are really supportive. It does feel like therapy in a good way.
Yeah.
Like, what I like about these stories is the fact that someone else's content, you know, is not the same as your exact story, but you can relate to the themes, you can relate to the feelings that someone had over certain events. So like exactly like what you're doing now, that's literally what happens as someone's telling a story and people are like, yes, yes.
This is how the show works. We have some names here in a bucket. These are brave people who want to share stories that are around this theme. And if at some point you feel inspired to tell a story, you can raise your hand when I ask you to, and then you can also join them.
Okay, so I grew up as an incredibly God-fearing child. My father is a heavily religious Catholic man, and my mother's kind of religious persuasion, although kind of can best be described as spiritual, Model C education in the early 90s seemed to rely pretty heavily on religion as an additional form of discipline. And so, it's so true. They were like, oh, they made us very scared of God. How cool is Face ID? Sorry. And my mother wouldn't let me go to church, but because at school I learned about God-fearing, I still needed God to know that I was very repentant. So I would have these incredibly long sessions of confession with my dog Toffee at the bottom of our garden in a place that we called Godimo. And a lot of these confessions were related to and were about me berating an incredible sexual attraction to Leonardo DiCaprio in Basketball Diaries. Because as we all know, the number one no-no of Catholicism is masturbation. And so my parents also didn't really... Oh, yes, and discovering my burgeoning sexuality didn't really get any easier because then he did Romeo and Juliet. And my parents never spoke about sex. As they entered into a very rocky period in their marriage, the only time I ever heard my mom talk about sex was when she was on the phone to my aunt about not getting any. And they did do the mandatory birds and bees talk, which was then just shoving a Q&A facts of life book at me. So what I knew about sex was, from Model C education and this book, was that sex was something that two people did when they were in love. It was something that they did when they were committed, and then they were therefore made for love. And my parents were also parents of two girls, so they warned us about this thing called reputation. They would tell us it wasn't nice.
Sitting next to me is Hayley. So I just want to find out from you, how's the experience of telling a story?
It's always kind of nerve-wracking because you
you know that it's true. And you never know who could show up. So essentially sometimes, and it has happened, that like the people who are in the stories show up, and then you're like, oh no. Because we tend not to name people by their actual names, just out of respect for people who haven't given consent for them to be featured in the story. It's not their story, it's your story. But yeah, so it's always like a little bit nerve-wracking to like put a piece of yourself like very much out in the open.
And now 2 reasons why should people come out to these storytelling series?
Reason number 1 is because it's like an alternative church. It's like a space where we come to share. And it's a really, really safe and beautiful evening of entertainment as well. But then the second thing is like I really believe in the power of stories to help bring us closer together as we understand more about each other's perspectives, which I think is so incredibly important in the context of South Africa.
As I grew up, it changed from wanting to have a boy hold my hand in front of our friends to wanting to actually kiss a boy. When I was 10, my friends were beginning to have their first kisses, and I wanted to have a first kiss. And I thought, one day, I'm going to find a boy that I like, and I'm going to kiss him. I'm not going to kiss my friends, because 10-year-olds are disgusting. I'm going to wait. And so, when I was 13, I went to a Catholic boys-only high school, boarding school, and horrific things happened, beautiful things happened. It was this kind of school that was like, it was built in 1926 by Belgian monks. And before I went to that school, I thought, oh, everyone is going to be wearing these beautiful Gregorian monks, like Gregorian, what are they, robes, like the monks, like that's why I wear this kind of thing now. But I got there, they were like, oh no, we don't have a school uniform. And I was the kind of nerd who was like, what does that mean? I was ready to look proper and go to morning prayers and sing from these long hymn books. They're like, no, we don't do that. What happened instead was that we woke up at 4:30 in the morning to take ice cold showers. It didn't matter if it was winter, summer, we did it. After that, we went to morning study. After morning study, it was morning prayer. After morning prayer, it was breakfast, school, lunch, manual labor. Manual labor was literally cleaning toilets with our hands.
And just like that, usule tu lenzomi liphelile. From me, Uhlopsile, and the Joburg TV team. Till next time.